Hello, party people. Welcome to another episode of I Don't Believe Jack. Hey, this show, it's weird. You're like, wait, didn't this show end? Wasn't it canceled? Well, it was, but, it's come back unexpectedly, sort of like SARS-CoV. Hey, so I'm back. I'm back. It's very nice to be here. I've been watching, whatchamacallit. I've been watching What They Do in the Dark, on FX, and I love the accent of the main character, or the Relentless, or whatever his name is. And, he's just wonderful. So I've been doing the voice. I like it so much. It's a very nice voice to do. And when you talk to yourself, yeah, character work is fun. I enjoy it. So since the last episode, not much has changed. How about with you? Kidding. I find myself at home, and this is it's an interesting time. I think one of the weirdest things right now is like is all the FOMO. Like, it's interesting. All during COVID, like, I wanted, like, you always have that feeling you should be doing something, you should be out there, you should be making things happen, you should be claiming your destiny, you should be taking all those messages fed to you by Instagram gurus, which I have unsubscribed from. Um, and you just want to keep, like, go, go, go. I think what's really interesting is, like, I really can't have FOMO right now because, like, nothing is happening. Like, there was a thought recently of, like, you're gonna move back to the East Coast and then you move to New York and you're gonna make stuff happen. And now I'm like, why would I want to move to New York? It's just expensive rent, and I just have a small box, but nowhere to actually, like, live. I wouldn't be able to go outside. So what would be the reason? There's, like, no reason to be there. There's, like, no reason. It'd be really strange actually in New York. So, like, there's no sense of FOMO. And now I'm just like, man, I just want to be in a place around people I love, and people who, um, if they get sick, I would be the one to take care of them. Or if I get sick, I guess they'd be the one to take care of me. That's the deal. That's the deal. But yeah, I just would want to kick it with the people who are close to me. So it's so funny. Like, this really has reinforced that idea that, like, yeah, FOMO's overrated, and you can live a much better, more relaxed life without it. So I don't know. It is funny. Like, there's just nothing to do. Um, I've been going a lot of walks more than before. I've been feeling funky. I don't know. It's just like, it's weird to feel out of routine, and out of sync. Even though, like, I worked from home before, and I still work from home now, but it's just an odd feeling, and it's confusing. Um, I mostly wanted to do this episode to just talk about all the COVID stuff. It's really funny. I find it really interesting that people will ask me my opinion, because I'm obviously the type to give my opinion on, like, a lot of things, but to give my opinion on COVID, because I think my obvious answer is, like, I'm not a scientist. I'm not an epidemiologist. I don't study viruses except on social media. And yeah, I don't know anything about any of that stuff. So yeah, it's like what would I know? I don't know anything. I'm not an expert. And I think that this is a really interesting time because, like, people are, like, claiming to be experts, and I think, like, that's really a waste of time and a waste of energy. But people seem to love to do it; they can't get enough, um, and I'm amused by that. I think one of the things that, like, kills me the most is I realize, like, it's interesting, this COVID thing, because, like, everyone is essentially bringing their, like, pet issue to COVID, and no one actually sees COVID for what it is, which, let's be honest, is still a fucking mystery. I think it's really interesting that, like, people want to talk authoritatively about COVID, but it's like, look, even people who have like PhDs who study viruses don't exactly know what it does. It's like really strange. Like it affects your lungs, it'll affect your liver, it'll affect your feet, and like these weird ass ways. Not the liver. I think I just made that up, and I'm sure that's now going to become a rumor. But yeah, it just affects everything, and I just think that that's so strange. Like it really is. It is. You know, it can screw up your lungs, screw up your feet. It's a real like multi hyphenate virus. You know what I mean? Like very successful. Like I think its mother, like if COVID has a mother, it's very proud of it. Brags to all the other mothers of viruses about how good COVID is doing. It's so successful. It's touching everyone. It's making such a big difference in the world. It's just so successful. I'm so proud of my son, COVID. Now, admittedly, I'm saying that COVID is a boy, but in terms of like wrecking things in the world, hey, probably a dude, right? I mean, very aggressive, very invasive. Um, you know, probably a dude. Um, but yeah, like I think everyone wants to bring their angle or their thing to this issue. Like I remember just like I saw so many hot takes, and I was just like, what is going on with us? Because the hot takes they bring me down because it's like a thing that I've complained about a lot on this podcast that is now resurrected. Um, which is like people are not reading the situation for what it is. Like I remember hearing people say things like, "You think we can destroy the environment? Like this is the Earth's punishment for us." Like, and it's like, no, like the Black Plague happened like before the Industrial Revolution. You know what I mean? Like maybe you could say, I mean, if anything, it's like maybe if you talk about it from that perspective, it was like COVID happened because of global trade flows and the ability of people to travel around the globe. Personally, I think that that's a great thing. And I think everyone who wants to show me pictures of them in Bali would also agree. Bali, or Belize, or Brussels, or Brazil, or Bucharest, or Boston, or a beach. Okay, that doesn't really work. So that doesn't start with an A. I'm out of ideas, okay? My stomach is full of turkey. I've been cooking like a beast in my Instant Pot. Or actually, my friend's Instant Pot. But it's my surrogate Instant Pot. I've adopted it. Um, but yeah, everyone's like bringing their angles to these issues. And I'm like, no one's actually like seeing what it is. Or everyone's like, let's blame Trump for this. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I have to see. I try to bring like neutrality to it so I can just say, I'm going to say what I'm going to say about it, which is like, I think on one hand, we definitely could probably blame the administration to some extent because the idea is they're going to hollow out. There's generally a trend of like this idea of hollowing out the civil service and people leaving under administrations that are sort of hostile to the mission of government agencies and are usually trying to look for ways to cut costs. But I don't really, I mean, that's a generalized statement. I'm not a journalist. Like, I don't know if he actually did budget cuts or if he turned people away from the department. Maybe there's turnover in these departments during Democratic administrations. I have no freaking clue. But it's that kind of information that I would need to actually have a credible public intellectual opinion instead of just a guy sitting using his bed as a desk and a cushion, a pillow behind him as a seat. If you can see on the YouTubes, the YouTubes, as my parents tell me, ask me about. But yeah, I mean, it's just funny because like one obvious thing, and this is just my thought, is like everyone's like praising, like look how responsive Australia was, and look how responsive South Korea was, and like why wasn't America so responsive? And I'm not like trying to take the side of like Trump, and maybe this is going to become like a conservative talking point, but like an obvious reason would be that Korea and Australia are both really close to where the outbreaks of some version of some kind of animal virus has been. They've like how many? This is the fourth one in 20 years. So yeah, they've always been near those things. So of course they're gonna have rapid testing. Of course they're gonna have like all these procedures to deal with this issue because like it's a real issue for them. You know what I mean? Like I think, if the virus hit America previously, I think we would have a lot more like we would be much more ready. And it's not to excuse the administration or the goofy injection things and all things the president's saying, but I'm just saying I got to think about that in context. Like after September 11th, we were pretty responsive about terrorism. If you ask brown people, they might say too responsive, in fact. You guys are too responsive. That was my Samuel L. Jackson impression. Can you tell? Too responsive with cheese. But so what am I doing? What am I doing? But yeah, I mean, like, it's not to cut him slack, but it is to put it in context. Like, yeah, of course we're not going to be so responsive to this issue because we haven't really we don't take this seriously, and it's not like we don't take this seriously because we're jerks. We don't take this seriously because it hasn't happened to us. People tend to take things like fairly seriously once their life gets messed up. Just something that people do, right? And the idea is like, otherwise, I'm gonna put these resources towards something else, like I don't know, tax cuts or bigger tanks, or I don't know, food for children, or I don't know, the $500 coffee mugs, grain, some subsidies. I don't know, uh, but I'm just saying, right? In context, part of the reason America's response sucked is because we hadn't really dealt with this before. I think. I mean, people will blame the CDC. We'll see. We'll unpack all that. But people are really quick to blame, and I think it actually. I mean, to me, the reason I'm against it, and the reason I would want these people who are making these claims to also be against that kind of behavior, is because A, it would make me more comfortable and make my life easier. But B, it lacks a certain kind of credibility when you immediately are like, I don't have all the facts, but I'm going to blame this person. Like, that's not really a great argument. Maybe that's. It's so funny. I'm staying with a friend, and she points out, like, you're such a lawyer about everything. And I'm like, I'm hardly a lawyer. I'm hardly a lawyer, lady. Hardly. And then I crack open another Milwaukee's Best. So maybe actually drinking, I am a lawyer, in fact. Okay, so we're going to take that back. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, we can hang this on him, but like, bro, I don't know if that's really going to work. And I think, as much as I hate it, man, like, it's so funny that like Trump was off the polls and he was like out of the news for like 2 weeks because it was really the COVID was the main story, and then he now hopped himself back as being the main story, which is brilliant on his part because I think that's I don't know if he's going to win that way, but that is his thesis. That is his thesis for how he wins elections. I think his thesis is fundamentally, if I can grab all the attention and I can control the narrative, then I'm riding the tiger. And if I'm riding the tiger can't eat me. It could eat Joe Biden. It could eat Ted Cruz. It could eat Mitt Romney. It could eat Jeb Bush, right? But it won't eat Hillary Clinton, but it won't eat me because I'm on its back. Which is funny that, like, that is how he thinks. I should actually write that down because that really is like, well, if you're riding the tiger, we can't eat you. So he just like will say crazy stuff so he can ride the tiger. I think it was telling my friend that I'm staying with. Her parents are Republicans. They voted for Trump in 2012 or 2016. They voted for Trump in 2012. That's how dedicated they were. They were like, they crossed out Mitt Romney's name and they wrote in Donald J. Trump. Right? But they voted for him in 2016. But it was really interesting. Like she was saying that her dad. These are California Orange County Republicans, by the way. So their vote doesn't really matter in this upcoming election. But she was saying that her dad is actually now like, I don't trust Trump. He says a bunch of bullshit. But then I asked a follow-up question, which was the key, because the liberal part of me was like, yes, stick it to him, right? Like all those Atlantic articles that say that Trump was going to leave office, I don't know, like 3 years ago. They were like, this week is the week he's going to be out. That's literally every Atlantic headline. Like they have a headline every week where like, this is the week where this house of cards falls apart. And I'm like, Atlantic? Can you be journalists again? I don't know what's going on with you goofballs. But they're like, this is the week he goes down, okay? You heard it here first, and you heard it here for the 150th time, alright? This is the week it all falls apart. And when they ask you where you heard first, tell them the Atlantic. I think that's goofy. I don't think that's the way this stuff works. But yeah, they're just like, um, I don't know what I was trying to say. I was just trying to say that, like, yeah. So the follow up question I asked my friend was, she said, yeah, my dad doesn't really trust Trump no more because he says these things that just aren't true. Because her parents were taking like all the COVID stuff very lightly at first until they realized it was real, and then they were like, "Oh, we can't trust this guy because he plays this stuff down, and people are dying from it." But then I asked the second question: "So, who's he going to vote for?" And she said, "Yeah, he's still going to vote for Trump because it's in his economic interest and in his ideological wheelhouse." And I was like, "That is the key question." Okay, counsel rests his case that he is awesome and insightful. Okay, but all self-aggrandizement aside, that really is the question. It's not about like whether people will think he's full of crap. Because I'm pretty sure when people voted for him, they thought he was full of crap. It's like, is he full of enough crap, and do I distrust him so much that I want to vote for the other person? Right? Because it's not like Jesus is on the other side, right? It's just a guy who's as old as Jesus. Okay? Big difference. Big difference. But like, yeah, I don't know. Right? And part of me thinks that like, even though Trump wins in some ways because like even if he's on the news and he's a goofball, like there's no way I don't see, I mean maybe I'm in California so I don't really see it and I don't really turn on the TV so I don't know. But my question is Joe Biden getting his message out? Are people hearing him? Are people relating? Are people understanding what he's about and his angle and his perspective? Because if they aren't, then I don't even know how effective this is. Like, I think he may be losing by actually Trump getting, Trump is getting pilloried by Hillary. No, he's getting, I was going into Eminem land with my flows. But, like, she can't, like, he can't, I don't know if Biden's making headway. I don't know if he's making headway in the states that actually matter. And I don't know what people in the states that matter are really thinking about these things. I'm talking Michigan. I'm talking Wisconsin. I'm talking Florida. I'm talking Virginia. I'm talking Pennsylvania. I'm talking Ohio. I'm talking Nebraska. No, not Nebraska. I'm talking Michigan. I already said it before. I'm out, out of the rest of the swing states. I'm not a political science major. I just play one on internet television. So, anyways, yeah, I don't know. That's just my thoughts. It is interesting. This is the last thing I'll say. It's just I think it is interesting because people will ask my opinion because they're like, "Hey, you're a pretty learned fellow. Like, what do you think is going to happen with COVID?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm not a scientist. Like, even scientists don't really understand this." And I know I already said that before, but I think beyond that, being like, even scientists don't understand this, so how am I going to understand this? I will say that there is my angle into these things is as a lawyer and as a policy person, so I can look at things from that perspective. And I'll tell you something that was like really interesting. I happened to be on a short-term engagement with an education company for the last couple months, and of course, unexpectedly, when all this COVID stuff broke, I was helping out. I was asked to work on that stuff. I thought something was really interesting in early March. One of the things that I saw, like, I saw it mid-March, but apparently it had been published in early March, and it was a guidance from the CDC to schools. And it was interesting because, right, in the public, they were telling people, hey, maybe you're going to have to go home and work from home for 3 weeks. Or like, hey, you're going to have to, like, maybe go home for like a few weeks. Like, we'll most likely be back, right? That's what all the employers were telling people. That's what politicians were communicating to people. What I loved was that when the CDC speaks to schools, they pull no punches. They talk no shit. They just really honestly said, and there's a document, you can pull it up if you go to like the U.S. Department of Education. And it was something from like early March. And basically the CDC said, based on what we know about COVID at this time, if you close the schools for anything less than 8 weeks, it won't even make a difference in the curve and the impact of the disease on our society. You have to be closing the schools expect to be closed for a minimum for 8 to 20 weeks. 8 to 20, that is a range you could drive a football field through. Uh, the Rock could pull a plane through. You could put a 747 on the back of a Mack truck on a continental shelf and put 8 to 20 weeks. That is so many weeks. But it was interesting because what it made me realize was the politicians can't communicate directly to the public about this stuff, but the public wants to know about what they're going to do about this. And I realized, to me, education is not only critical for successful and both financially and intellectually satisfying life, and for the advancement of minorities and women. Education is also a key to see the truth of what people actually mean when they bullshit to the public about how long COVID will last. Because education is an area that like people can't sort of fuck around. They can't futz. It's not private sector. It is the government. It involves children. So the idea is like people are going to be pretty pissed if you're playing games with them. So it's just really interesting to see that like education is an area where like public health officials are like very communicative, very upfront about what they think is going to happen. But in other areas, like for example, the CDC can't come out and say something. The CDC has to defer to the president about it. But the CDC, when it talks to the U.S. Department of Education, can just tell them the god dang truth, which I think is just interesting, that asymmetry. So if you are looking for information, I think schools are sort of a good canary in the coal mine for what's going to happen. And that comes from the idea that they'd bring canaries down. Coal miners would bring canaries down because canaries would be more sensitive to gases and stuff, I think. So the idea is they would, if a canary started fainting, you knew that men really shouldn't be there. They need to leave because the idea is it's too dangerous. I guess a lot of canaries died, which is sad. But anyways, you get the idea. Hope the children will not die. And in fact, people who expose children to COVID will be held very, very accountable. So they can't really play around. And they have to plan this stuff out ahead of time. So I actually think again, not a scientist, but if I want to really understand what the scientists really think and what our economy really thinks, I'd say look at the schools. Schools are the best predictor of what's actually going to happen. And I say that sort of based on the fact that even I just stumbled upon this document. I remember like a friend of mine was like, the person I'm staying with, she had been sent home from work and they said, oh, it'll be 3 weeks. And I was like, oh, I don't know. And then I remember that like that week I was doing research for the education company and I pulled up this document and I sent it to her and I said, 8 weeks minimum. Minimum. And for the most part, that has been shown to be true. So I think that that's the most predictive thing. I think that the second most predictive thing is probably like live sporting events and venues. And I say that not only as an anxious stand-up comedian slash wannabe public speaker and public intellectual. Not want to be. I am. I am speaking to the public. Okay, I'm going to get in a mirror. Love yourself. Love yourself, Shaq. Right? That's positive affirmations to myself. Anyways, okay, so we're going to take a break. We're going to go back from that. But because I think it's the same thing. It's the idea that, like, I think we're going to see some of the biggest collisions between private interest and public authorities and private authorities is stuff like sporting events. Because, and the reason I say that is because, like, the interest in that case, in other words, you know, like boxing movies, like heroes are as good as their villains, right? The idea is like matchups make good fights and glean the truth. So I think when you have Governor Newsom, say, against the Golden State Warriors, I think that conflict, you know, to put it in almost Shakespearean or dramatic fashion, when I took a few English classes, you know, like ultimately, the truth about COVID is, at least from a policy perspective, is revealed when you see science collide with something like education. Because the idea is the stakes are so high and the accountability is so great that they're just going to tell the truth. And also, there's no, you know, DeVos isn't gonna not have them publish that because, but you know, Trump may say, hey, you know, ignore this report. But the idea is like when they communicate to the schools, they'll communicate in sort of this honest way because the interests are aligned of disseminating information and good administration of schools. Whereas that's not necessarily true between the CDC and the White House because Trump is trying to get reelected and the CDC has its own agenda of protecting people and also not making any mistakes. Maybe in some cases being overly conservative. But I think there's a great collision if you look at the fight between, say, owners of football teams and governors, because you know that if those guys are forced to back down, if the owners of sports teams are forced to back, specifically football, that means it's real. And that also means the governor all these governors are pulling out their big guns and saying no to the private sector. You can't do this. Because obviously, like, the governor can stop a lot of small businesses from getting together. But like big moneyed interests like sports, if they're getting checked, if their schedules are getting pushed back, that is to me also predictive of when the crisis will truly end. So, like I said, education companies, and I'd say like live sporting events. Live music, maybe, but I think sporting events, because again, it's such a concentration of power, money, and influence, and they have to have good relations with the government. But they also like love to squeeze the last dollar out of any economic opportunity. They will push the politicians and the scientists to the limit in terms of forcing the scientists to make their case about why things have to stay shut. So that conversation, I think, actually reveals the truth. And of course, you get to be the judge. They're just the litigants. So, anyways, that's all my thoughts. That is my episode of Don't Believe Jack. Don't expect me back anytime soon. But I do hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed the ramblings. There were a lot of non sequiturs in there. Next time I come back, there will be better, properly written jokes, I promise. Scout's honor, and whatever this means in the Hunger Games. I'm holding up 3 fingers. Okay, love you. Stay safe. Be with your family. Call your loved ones. I know I am. And many of you who are listening, I consider and include among my loved ones. So I love you. And if I haven't told you, well, I'll tell you the next time we talk.